Alright, so things actually turned out a little different. Some things have changed since I started putting up these videos, and well, one person pointed me to the fact that Shift did actually attempt to do this run himself. For those of you not familiar, Shift is a speedrunner who kind of overtook a lot in this speedrunning community. And he actually managed to get 2 spatulas that I did not. It was interesting. He had the same number of spatulas that I got, 71, and I got a few more socks than he did, but he managed to pick up a couple more socks. No, not socks, spatulas. 2 of them, specifically, both of which are actually in kelp forest. So I'm going to pick those up. And after that, I'm going to have a few more surprises for you guys, which I'll have plenty of time to talk about during the next segment. But for now, it turns out you can do this. Never had any idea you could do this. But it turns out it's actually possible to get the 2 campers I don't have, somehow. You can actually end up walking all the way up here. Poor old Shift actually used this same method to skip to the kelp slide too, which was very frustrating for him and a lot harder than it had to be. That's one camper. Next one, those of you familiar with this game may know, is actually in the caves. Now, how you might get through the caves, I would not know, but it turns out there is actually something you can do here. I'm not sure how recently this method was developed, but it turns out you can do something a little peculiar here. I think I mentioned at some point in this little playthrough that it's really, really difficult to clip through things in Bikini Bottom. By the way, every time I come to this level again, that monsoon isn't there anymore. It seems like it only spawns there once, and that's kind of weird. Anyways, so as I was saying, you can sometimes clip through things in a small number of situations, usually with really, really weird level geometry, such as what we have here. We have this whole thing here, and if you just jump at it like a madman, or if you use something called L-clipping, which I don't have access to because that retards the cruise level, you can actually make something interesting happen. Something very useful for speedrunning, as you can probably imagine, I think. I'm not familiar with current routes. But eventually, if you jump like a madman in a few different spots, sometimes double dash, this will happen. Look at that. Now what do we do from here? Well, the thing is, we can't really stand on the ceiling for the most part, but we can stand on the rocks that are jutting out of the ceiling, conveniently enough. So we can actually climb around, and we cannot actually get inbounds in many places. I'm not going to do it at all during this playthrough, because there's only 2 places I've managed to do it, and both times are accidental and completely useless. But trying to stand on top of these rocks that are only visible from one side, as troublesome as that is, you can eventually get on over to where the camper is. And the nice thing is, lots of things in this particular area you don't actually need to be in bounds to do, you just need to be in proximity of things. So let me pick up a camper like that. And now we have another camper. That meaning we have the last camper. So that brings us one spatula closer to actually finishing this game.
You are.
No problem, Mrs. Puff. Always glad to lend a hand, Mrs. Puff.
I found this golden spatula.
Wow, Mrs. Puff.
Lots of Mrs. Puff. So that's a very nice thing to have. And then, as I mentioned, there are actually 2 spatulas that we missed. The other one I'm kind of embarrassed to have missed. This one I just wasn't familiar with the methods we could get it, and I was really impressed. But it turns out there was actually another spatula I kind of just wrote off that I thought we couldn't get that we can get. It's kind of dumb. But you'll see that the only other spatula it could be, other than Parker's Crisis, is, I don't remember what it's called, actually. Down the swamp, yes. What you're supposed to do is you're supposed to take the freezing fruit as Patrick, freeze the water, run along to where the spatula is before the timer makes it trapped once again. But it turns out, as Shift showed in his stream, it's not really that tough to just kind of, you know, just run along. You have actually a pretty direct path. So aside from having to go around that one part there, you can actually just run straight over to the island. And look at that, there's a spatula. So that was my bad. Kind of disappointed in that, but whatever. So that's 73 spatulas, only 2 more. So what are we gonna do? Well, we have 8 socks, so that means we're gonna want to get 2 more socks. That's a good opportunity to get another spatula, and it'll just be 1 spatula short. Before that though, I do actually have a little detour I want to take. See, when we wanted to figure out which last spatula to get after we got the last 2 socks, we had to figure out what spatula to get. Because it already seemed like we had ruled out every single spatula we possibly could have gotten. So what were we going to do? Well, here's what I was trying to do. This is actually something I didn't ever manage to finish, but in the spirit of showing all the things I can actually accomplish in this playthrough, just like I was originally going to do, whether or not they actually end up being fruitful, I'll show up how I can actually almost, only almost, actually get Power Crystal Crisis without using Crucible or Bubble Bowl, just by clipping out of bounds and exploring this place like crazy. So it turns out, you can actually pick up all these crystals, well, most of them. So as long as you can get to these crystals, you can actually pick them up by just going under the ground. Just as far as you think. And yes, that Sleepy Time is a jerk. But, so that's one Power Crystal, and that's the easiest one by a decent margin. But there are, I believe, 6 in all. 6 in all? I believe, yes. And I can actually get 4 of them. Now, when I started recording this, I was only ever able to get 3, but I actually ended up discovering a way to get one of the remaining 3 as I recorded this, which was interesting. And that involved the most difficult jump I've ever done in this game. It took me probably like 20 straight minutes of trying, but I was so sure I could get it, and I actually did. But for now, we're not going to worry about that one. That's going to be the last one we pick up. First, we're going to pick up the easier ones. Now I've noticed that there's actually a crystal not too far off from that camper that we picked up earlier. And we'll return to that area in order to pick up that crystal as well. That crystal off my distance is the one that I managed to figure out how to pick up during this recording. But that one there, that one is not too bad to get either. Although I don't know if that's the one we're going to get right now or not. I think it's actually going to be the next one we get. And then I'll head on over to where the camper was. I do hate trying to navigate this roof. You can only barely see the things you can stand on if you're looking at it from the right angle. And no camera angle really seems to help that much. In any case, so we can actually jump on along over here, which I believe I showed already. But you can actually get a little bit further too. You don't need to drop straight down. There are lots more rocks you can stand on. Almost every single rock can actually be stood on from behind on the inside, just because they're generally placed rather generously jutting out of the corner. For some reason, you can actually stand on this one ceiling. I don't know why that is, but it's very lucky. This means you can actually just run around here, and spin and jump, boom. That drops us down here, which isn't the best place to get to. Yeah, to get to the next camp crystal, so I'm actually have to reset. Nothing special happens, by the way, if you fall in the void. I don't know if anything special happens if you have Hans disabled. I don't know if this game has really any out-of-bounds detection. I think if you fall for a really long time out of bounds in any level in this game, you'll eventually get picked up by Hans, maybe. At least if you don't have Hans disabled, I'm really not sure. I've never really had the patience to figure that stuff out. There's not really any use I've been able to find to death warping this area either. I have been able to get into one area, the area of the Sleepy Time robot, with the death warp by activating the checkpoint and then falling in goo, because there's goo in a few places in this area, but there's nothing useful in that part, and you have no reason to go to the Sleepy Time robot area. So, well, I never really bothered exploring. In any case, it doesn't really get any easier to do this clip. But times it's faster than other times, thankfully. So, what gave rise to me actually figuring out how to get a bit more stuff, so to speak, get more spatulas, get more socks in this playthrough, was not really just watching Shift's playthrough. That got me 2 of them. That's still looking at those 2 socks and the final spatula to get. And that actually ended up coming from a conversation I had with a few people on Shift's Discord chat, actually. I tried to get into contact with Shift himself, because he seemed to be implying that if he was able to get to the Murmur Layer, that he would actually be able to get the Prawn Spatula, he'd be able to get the Rolling Ball Spatula. That sounded very strange to me. So I was thinking, how could he possibly do that? And so I messaged him on YouTube, and waited, and he sent me nothing. So I went to his Discord chat, and ended up asking around there. He never actually acknowledged that either. But the other people there were very nice and were thankfully, nice enough to help me with that, and some people got excited to help me. So it turned out that in particular a few people, primarily Super Flare Star, who will probably end up commenting on this video, ended up helping me pick some stuff up and provide some moral support. And right here I actually just decided to explore a little bit more. There's nothing more for me to pick up in this corner of the level, but I decided I might as well try out running around. By the way, those walls, those bamboo walls, those have giant collisions. They go way out of bounds. You can't jump around them in almost any case or go over them. It's ridiculous how big they are. Their collisions are way bigger than they look. What was I trying to do here? I don't even remember at this point. I'm just watching to try to find out. Yes, in the midst of this, yeah, in the midst, I just give up. In the midst of this, what ended up happening was Flare was trying to find ways to get the last few things, and I was also trying, and this is what I was working on. Flare ended up finding the last piece to the puzzle in terms of getting everything needed for this run. But what I actually ended up doing was I spent a lot of time trying to get all these power crystals and made most of the progress I needed, just not all of it, unfortunately. Right now we're going to start on the crystals that I can't actually collect. We're going to go for the first crystal I can't collect yet, and then we'll, after that, pick up the one that I figured out how to pick up during this recording. That means, of course, cutting out yet again, but we're going to take a different route this time. This time we actually want to go over to that big area. That really tall room, because there's one crystal at the top of that room. Do I actually go around? You can go get around the room either way. Yeah, here we go. It's really awkward jumping across this whole thing. Timing for double jumps and attacks in the air are not quite what you expect them to be. Thankfully you can stay on that tunnel as well. But so, once we're here, you get into some tricky jumps, which aren't all too bad, provided you have save states at least. I don't really feel like I did just there. But unfortunately, it's one of those situations where you eventually get to a point where you need to be able to make a jump that's just slightly higher. See this rock that's I'm facing right now? I was able to get on top of that one, I'd be done. I'd be able to pick up the crystal here. I have not managed to get on top of it. I can jump on its side, right here, but I can't get anywhere from that. And you can also get to other crystal or other rocks. Oh, can you? I don't know if I can. That one rock off to the left that I'm facing right now, I don't know if I can reach that or not. I don't quite remember. But you can drop down here. And unfortunately, there's really no way to actually get around this fence. I haven't managed to get into this fenced-in area right here, between this wall that I'm standing in front of right now and the wall that I'm facing. It's off in the distance. But I do end up finding out, and what you're seeing me do right now is just trying to figure out ways to approach this. I'm finding out you can stand on this little thing down here, just this little thing. You can also somehow do a single jump, then a double jump that's very precisely timed, and then you can get just barely, just a little more horizontal distance by using a bubble bounce of all things. That's the hardest jump I've ever done in this game. And I do a few spins in victory, because what you guys just saw happen in a few seconds took me about half an hour. So, yes, I ended up wasting a lot more time than I should have on trying to get all the power crystals here, but I had hope it would actually happen. It ended up just not happening. One thing I didn't actually mention is that one of these socks that we wanted to collect, I actually ended up realizing could be collected by, once again, watching Shift stuff. The same day, I believe, that it was pointed out to me that Shift had done his own attempt at doing a playthrough of this game with only Spongebob, he actually uploaded a video on something called, I believe it was, slide bashing, where you can use a bubble bash on a slide, almost as if you're using a bubble bash while using cruise boost. Basically meaning you can actually use a bubble bash as a jump by moving forwards as you use it. You just have to be on a slide. And he was trying to do something very particular with it, something that was actually very convenient for me, and had very practical application for this playthrough. You'll see what that is next. I think that's going to be our next location, our next destination, after we attempt to pick up the last power crystal here. So unfortunately there are two power crystals that worked out how to pick up, not just one. So aside from the one in the tall room, there's also this one here. There's the one in the room with a bunch of goo. And it kind of suffers from the same issue as the one I just picked up almost did, where I can't really get into that room at all, because it branches off from the area that's enclosed by 2 walls I haven't been able to get around. So from here, there's not really anything that I've worked out how to do. I can't jump to that distant platform from here. I can't actually jump on the rock that's off to my left. You know, it looks like you might be able to because there's an invisible wall. I can jump far enough to drown. And if that was able to give me a good death warp, a useful death warp, that would be awesome, but I haven't managed to make that work. Because there's no way to death warp in a useful way here. You can only death warp into the areas of sleepy time, and that still leaves me 1 wall away from the area I need to be in. So, not much to do. Very unfortunate. In any case, so the one sock that Shift was looking at picking up was actually on Sand Mountain, appropriately enough, considering that we're doing something called slide bashing. And he mentioned there was no way a human could ever pick up this sock, because it involves something a little ridiculous. See, the problem with slide bashing is you can only do it while Spongebob is not in his slide animation. So you see what I was doing there is I was planning on jumping down this entire slide on foot and doing a perfect frame jump every single time I landed on the slide. That would be very slow. Thankfully, the same glitch that requires you to actually not be in the slide animation allows you to continue not being in the slide animation. See, I can move at slide speeds if I use the bubble bash while on a slide, while also simultaneously not actually into the slide animation. What happens is, if you use a spin attack as you land on make that jump. As you land on a slide, you have 1 frame afterwards to a bubble bash, where you'll actually still have the speed from the slide. And it turns out that that's just barely enough height. This is a really precise jump, by the way, but it's just barely enough height to get on top of here. That's another part of this playthrough that was condensed into about a minute, despite taking me at least half an hour to actually record, because it wasn't terribly easy doing all those 1-frame tricks, especially with my keyboard dying. I mean, I mentioned in a previous part that my arrow keys were starting to stop working, primarily my right arrow key, which is what I use for jumping in this game. Now, last sock. Now, both me and Flare actually figured out a way to get the sock separately. For some reason, my way of getting this didn't actually work when I tried to do it on camera. What I did was I used Spongebob storage. We're going to use Spongebob storage to get on top of a fallen building next to another building with a sock. I'd pretty much entirely disregarded the sock for some reason, and that's why I end up choosing this as the first one to try to get. But for some reason, what I tried to do didn't work, or rather what I did do this time didn't work this time. See, last time when I tried, what I successfully did to pick up that sock was I went on top of that cannon, and the cannon was still firing. So what I was able to do was I was able to damage boost from the cannon shooting something at me at point blank, and then jump onto the building with a sock on it. But for some reason it didn't work here, so I decided to reload the level. So this was actually the first sock I tried to get too, that me and Flare both tried to get, because it seemed like the only realistic sock for the most part. Because most of the socks we don't have at this point are socks that seem completely impossible to get a Spongebob. Because Spongebob can't even access the area they're in or something like that. Or because I need to have a power tank to even appear, things like that. And this was a sock that I just kind of neglected for some reason. So the boost didn't end up being necessary to Spongebob storage, because what Flare did that also worked just fine was this. He ended up using, not quite a damage boost, but using a frame perfect double jump from that Thunder Tiki. Usually when I do a damage boost, I use a bubble bash, because you can still maintain your speed from getting knocked away from something, from the knockback. And that gives you more speed and distance than you would with the double jump. In fact, I even forgot you could do a double jump after that. But in this case, because I wasn't getting knocked away, explosions don't knock you away if you're caught in them, it ends up being necessary to do the double jump, which Flare showed me very helpfully. So there's only one thing left to do, and Flare was the one that found this spatula as well. So he ended up being the one to complete the run. This was the last spatula we got. We got the sock before this. And he thought, you know, I really don't know if we can actually do this. I think you might be able to clip outside of here. Because a popular trick is to actually clip outside of this area and do something very interesting. But I tried it before. I had tried it. I was never able to clip out of this area without using something called L-clipping, which requires a bubble bowl, or not the bubble, the cruise bubble. Just jumping like an idiot at this corner never really seemed to work. Flare, after trying it for a very long time, it seemed like at least 20 minutes, so I was actually able to do it a couple times. As you see me repeat here. Don't know why it didn't work when I tried it. Luck is a part of figuring out these sorts of things for some reason. So we have this clip now. So what do we do with this? Well, it turns out that a number of bosses in this game have a specific point in space, where if you touch that point, it just instantly ends the boss fight, for some reason. Prawn has this, for example, and it's outside of his area, out of bounds. And you can just barely touch with only Spongebob. I didn't think it was even possible with only Spongebob, without using Cruise Bubble Bubble Bowl, because you usually need to use a Cruise Boost. But this is the second hardest jump I've ever done. Turns out you can just barely make this jump as far as possible. Really late double jump, really late spin, and then just get the extra few centimeters of distance. You do a bow bounce, because you can move laterally just a little bit, just a centimeter or two, as you're doing a bow, or as you're initiating a bow bounce, and that gives you enough distance to make that jump. And as you saw in the power crystals, I end up reusing that same strategy later to pick up that last power crystal. The last one I was actually able to pick up. But with this spatula having been collected and those other socks having been picked up, unlike I had thought, this run is actually in fact possible and finished. So never mind what I said at the beginning of this whole series, where I told you to ignore the whole run completed text at the beginning of the game. This is in fact now a run completed by me and other people helping out. It's primarily me using strategies and tricks taught by other people, but I kind of did it at least. And now, of course, we need to actually get back in bounds. I could have just warped there with a taxi, but I didn't feel like it. I feel like showing off a little trick that I just never actually mentioned. Something fun you can do in this is you can actually, even if you don't have the security bridge lowered, you can actually just jump from the bridge to the area and just warp from there while you're in the air. I just thought it was kind of dumb. Anyways, so 74 spatulas. Now the mythical 75 that we need to access the final boss. How are we going to beat the final boss without the Cruise Bubble Bowl? That is what you're going to see. That was one of the first things I figured out in this entire playthrough. So stay tuned for that. It's going to be nice.